My name is Marianne Caldwell. I'm 55 years old, and for most of my life, I truly believed marriage looked like this. You show up, you stay consistent, you carry the weight without making a speech about it. Turns out, I'd been living inside a story where I was the problem, without ever knowing someone else was keeping notes. After 25 years of raising kids and paying every bill, my husband looked at me and said, "You were never emotionally present." So I handed him the house keys, I transferred half the savings, and I told him, "Now you'll have plenty of space to miss me." When he called a month later asking, "Can we talk?" I let it go to voicemail. I used to think I'd want closure, but I didn't realize, until I heard his voice shaking in that message, that the silence was the closure. His name is Ethan. We met when I was 28, fresh out of grad school, still naive enough to think love was a mutual agreement, not a competition. Ethan was 26, working as a paralegal, charming in that calm, capable way that makes you believe a person is safe. We clicked over terrible wine at a friend's birthday party, laughing too loudly, sitting too close, telling ourselves we'd both been unlucky in love before, but maybe this time. 6 months later, we were engaged. A year after that, married. 2 years in, our son Michael was born. Then Emma came 3 years later. Standard American dream, right? Suburb, mortgage, minivan. Photos where everyone's smiling so hard you can't tell who's holding their breath. And yes, before anyone asks, I worked a lot. I'm not going to pretend otherwise. But I worked because that's what you do when you have a mortgage in the suburbs, 2 kids who want decent colleges, and a husband who liked the idea of staying home after Emma was born, at least for a while, until a while quietly became the default. I never complained. I paid for piano lessons, soccer leagues, family vacations to Disney, braces, prom dresses, Michael's engineering degree, Emma's art school tuition. I paid the property taxes when they doubled. And when Ethan's mother needed assisted living and his siblings couldn't chip in, I paid that too. Because what kind of spouse watches their partner panic and says, "Not my problem"? I paid for everything. And I was there. Maybe not in the way Ethan wanted, but I was there. I coached Michael's little league team for 4 years, even though I hate baseball. I sat through every single one of Emma's gallery showings, even the one where she glued tampons to a canvas and called it feminism. I took Ethan to marriage counseling twice, once in 2008, once in 2019. Both times the therapist said we were fine, just needed to communicate better. We stopped going because Ethan said it was a waste of money. And maybe that should have been my first real warning. He didn't want tools. He wanted a verdict. 3 months ago, on a Tuesday night in July, I came home around 7:30. I'd been at the office late finishing a project proposal. My head was full of numbers and deadlines. My shoulders hurt in that familiar way they had hurt for years, like my body had memorized the shape of responsibility. Ethan was in the kitchen wiping down counters with that tight-lipped expression he'd perfected over time. An expression that said, "I'm calm," while everything underneath it screamed, "I'm keeping track." "Dinner's cold," he said. "I'll heat it up." "Sorry," I replied, already sensing the trap. The meeting ran over. They always do. I didn't take the bait. I grabbed a plate from the fridge, leftover chicken and rice, and stuck it in the microwave. The hum filled the silence. And then Ethan said it. Just like that. No preamble, no buildup. "I don't think I love you anymore." I stopped mid-reach for a fork. "What?" "I don't think I love you," he repeated, voice steady. "I don't think I have for a long time." I turned to face him. He wasn't crying. He wasn't angry. He looked calm. Like someone who'd rehearsed the script so many times, he'd stopped feeling it. "Where is this coming from?" I asked. "It's been coming for 25 years, he said. "Marianne, you've never been emotionally present." The words hit me like ice water. "I've been here," I said, and I heard how small it sounded. "You show up," he continued, not even raising his voice. "You pay bills. You sit in rooms with us, but you're not here. You don't see me. You don't ask me how I'm doing. You don't care." I blinked, trying to understand how a person could say that with a straight face. "I ask you all the time how you're doing." "No," Ethan said. "You ask if I need anything from the store. That's not the same thing." Something cold settled in my chest. Not anger, not grief, something worse. Confusion. Because in my mind, I'd been pouring myself into this family for decades. And suddenly he was talking like I'd been absent the whole time, like I'd been a ghost with a paycheck. "So what do you want?" I asked quietly. "Another round of therapy? A vacation? What?" "I don't know," he said. "I just needed to say it out loud." That conversation ended with me sleeping in the guest room. And then it became a pattern. For the next 6 weeks, we lived like polite strangers who knew each other's coffee order, but not each other's hearts. Ethan would make comments here and there, little verbal paper cuts. You never listen. You wouldn't understand. It's always about work with you. And at first I tried. I really did. I asked questions. I suggested dinner out. I offered counseling again. But every attempt felt like pushing on a door that was already locked from the other side. So I started keeping track too. Not in a petty way, more like I was trying to see if I was crazy. Ethan never once asked me how I was doing either. Never asked if I was tired, stressed, burned out from carrying the financial weight of our family for a quarter century. It was all about him, his unmet needs, his loneliness, his narrative, and then came the breaking point. A Saturday in late August. The kids were both out of state, Michael in Seattle with his fiancée, Emma in Portland, doing whatever art school graduates do. Ethan and I were sitting in the living room. He was reading a book like nothing was wrong. I was going through bills, the same bills I'd been going through for years, the same bills that kept our life upright. He looked up and said, "I think we should separate." I stared at him. "You want a divorce?" "I don't know," he said, and his voice got softer, almost practiced. "I just need space to figure out who I am without you." And that's when something in me snapped. Not with rage, more like a switch flipped. I realized I was done. Done being the bad guy. Done being the emotionally absent villain in his story while he played the long-suffering husband. I stood up, walked to the kitchen, grabbed the spare house keys from the drawer, and came back. I dropped them on the coffee table in front of him. "Here," I said. Ethan blinked. "What are you doing?" "The house is paid off," I said, voice steady, even as my insides shook. "It's yours." His mouth parted slightly, like he couldn't decide whether to be shocked or relieved. "What are you talking about?" "You want space?" I said. "You've got it. I'll move out. You keep the house. I'll transfer half the savings to your account on Monday. You'll have plenty of money and plenty of space to figure out who you are." "Marianne, I didn't mean—" "No," I cut in, calm as glass. "You did mean it, and you're right. I've been emotionally absent, so now I'll be physically absent too." His face tightened. "You're being ridiculous." "Maybe," I said. "But I'm done, Ethan. I'm done being resented for providing. I'm done being told I'm not enough when I've given you everything I have." That night, I called Michael and Emma. I told them their father and I were separating. Amicable, nothing they needed to fix. Michael asked if I was okay. I lied and said yes. Emma cried and asked if it was her fault. I told her, of course not, and meant it so hard it hurt. By Monday afternoon, I'd moved into a furnished apartment downtown. Small, one bedroom, but it was mine. I transferred $140,000 into Ethan's account, half of everything we had. I kept my retirement separate the way it had always been set up. I forwarded my mail. I updated my address with the bank. And then I waited. For the first 2 weeks, nothing. Radio silence. And that should have felt like peace. But it didn't. It felt like standing in the quiet after an explosion. Ears ringing, heart still braced, wondering what part of the building was going to collapse next. Because the truth was, I didn't believe Ethan was calm. I believed he was calculating. And somewhere, deep in my gut, I had the uneasy sense that I hadn't just walked out of a marriage. I had walked into this part of the story where the real scorekeeping finally started. The first 2 weeks after I moved out felt almost unreal, like I'd stepped into someone else's life and was waiting for the director to yell cut. My apartment downtown was small, furnished, impersonal. The kind of place meant for short stays and transitional people. Beige couch, generic art, a bed that creaked if I rolled over too quickly. But it was quiet. No tight-lipped cleaning in the kitchen. No comments disguised as truth. No silent tally being kept in the corner of the room. I went to work. I came home. I ate what I wanted. I slept when I was tired. And in the spaces where Ethan's criticism used to live, I started hearing my own thoughts again, slowly, cautiously, like a frightened animal testing whether it was safe to come out. I went back to the gym. Not the way I used to, rushed, half-present, answering emails between sets. This time, I went like someone who belonged to herself. I started reading again, too. Something I hadn't done in years because my evenings had always been filled with school forms, bills, doctor appointments, and the quiet labor of keeping everyone else upright. I forgot how much I liked thrillers. I forgot what it felt like to be absorbed in a story that wasn't my own. For a brief moment, I thought, maybe this would be the clean break. Maybe Ethan truly wanted space. Maybe he'd feel relief. Maybe he'd finally stop looking at me like I was the reason he couldn't breathe. But then September arrived with that particular kind of early fall chill. Sharp, crisp, honest. And on Wednesday night, September 13th, my phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. Can we talk about the finances? I have some questions. I stared at it longer than I should have. Not because I didn't understand the words, because I understood the pattern. We hadn't spoken in 2 weeks. Not once had he asked if I was settling in. Not once had he asked if I was okay. But finances? That, apparently, was worth breaking the silence for. I didn't respond immediately. I paced my apartment, made tea, let the water boil too long, turned off the stove, turned it back on. Then I finally texted back. What questions? His reply came fast. The property tax bill came. I don't know how to pay it. And there it was. The first crack in his freedom. I leaned against my counter, eyes closed for a second, feeling something that wasn't quite satisfaction and wasn't quite grief. Just inevitability. I texted, same way we've always paid it. Log into the county website, use the checking account. A pause. Then, can you just do it? My throat tightened, not with anger, but with the strange sting of confirmation. This wasn't about missing me. This was about missing what I did. I typed carefully. No, it's your house now. Silence. 2 days went by. Then the next message arrived like a slap wrapped in a bow. You're being petty. I didn't respond to that one at all. And I told myself I wouldn't, because the moment I started explaining myself, I would slide right back into the role Ethan had written for me, the cold provider, the unfeeling woman who needed to be corrected. I wasn't going to beg for the right to have boundaries. Still, I'd be lying if I said it didn't shake me. Not because I felt guilty for saying no, but because it exposed something I'd spent years ignoring. Ethan didn't actually know how our life worked. He lived inside it, benefited from it, complained about it. But the mechanics, the structure, the invisible scaffolding, that was always me. And suddenly he was standing in the middle of the house he'd demanded space in, holding a bill like it was a threat. A few days later, Michael called. Mom, he said, voice careful. Dad sounds weird. Weird how? Like, distracted. He asked me if I knew where the login for the mortgage portal was. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was so unbelievably on brand. The house is paid off, I reminded him gently. I know, Michael said, but he's freaking out about other stuff. Utilities, insurance, something about... He exhaled. He just doesn't sound like himself. I let the silence sit. Michael was 30-something, an engineer, logical. He'd always been my steady one. If he noticed something was off, it meant Ethan wasn't just adjusting. He was unraveling. I'm sure he'll figure it out, I said, keeping my tone neutral. Are you okay? Michael asked. There was a beat where my chest tightened. This was the first time anyone had asked me that since the separation started. And the temptation to tell the truth, the whole truth, was almost physical. But I didn't. Because Michael didn't deserve to carry the rawness of his parents' failure. I'm fine, I said, just settling in. Emma called later that week too. Different energy, more emotional, more immediate. Mom, she whispered, like she was afraid someone would overhear. Dad's been walking around the house like he's haunted. Haunted, I repeated softly. Yeah, like he keeps stopping in rooms, like he expects you to be there, like he's waiting for something to happen. I swallowed, because I could picture it. Ethan standing in the kitchen, staring at the microwave he used, to mock me for using too often. Ethan sitting in the living room, hearing the echo of our kids' voices. Ethan realizing silence doesn't feel like freedom when you didn't build the life you're now responsible for. Emma, I said gently, your father wanted space. This is what space looks like. She didn't argue, but I heard her breathing change, little broken edges of emotion she wasn't saying out loud. I just hate this, she murmured. I do too, I admitted, voice quieter than I intended. The calls from the kids started coming more often after that. Not accusing, not confrontational, just checking in. And each time they called, I held the line. I didn't badmouth Ethan. I didn't tell them about the years of resentment. I didn't tell them how small I'd felt inside my own marriage, like my role was to be useful, not loved. That wasn't their burden, but it was mine, and mine had been heavy for a long time. Then, on September 28th, exactly 1 month after I left, Ethan called. I was on my couch, laptop open, watching a baseball game I didn't care about. It was just noise, company, a way to make the apartment feel less empty. His name lit up my screen. For a moment, my hand hovered over the phone. And I realized something. I wasn't afraid of talking to him. I was afraid of what it would do to me, to hear him again, to feel that familiar pull to fix, to soothe, to make things easier. So I let it ring. It went to voicemail. His voice came through thin and strained. Marianne, it's me. Can we talk? He cleared his throat. I think we should talk. Call me back. I listened once, then deleted it. He called again the next morning. Voicemail again. I don't understand why you're doing this, he said, sounding sharper now, like he was reaching for anger because sadness wasn't working. I didn't ask you to leave. I just wanted space. Call me. I didn't. By the third call that evening, I was tired. Tired of the drama without the honesty. Tired of him rewriting the timeline to make himself feel better. So I answered. What do you want, Ethan? I asked. I want to talk, he said quickly. Too quickly. So talk. Not like this, he snapped, then softened instantly, like he'd caught himself. Not on the phone, in person. Why? Because I already knew the answer. Because he wanted the version of me that would sit across from him, listen, and absorb his feelings like they were my responsibility. Because he wanted to look into my face and see if I was still pliable. Because, he exhaled, because I think we made a mistake. My stomach turned, slow and heavy. We? I repeated. A long pause. Then, quietly, I made a mistake. There it was. The first true crack. I shouldn't have said those things, he said. I was angry. I wasn't thinking clearly. You said you didn't love me, I reminded him. I was wrong, he insisted, voice rising like he could force the truth back into place. No, I said softly. You weren't wrong. You were honest. Maybe for the first time in years. Marianne, he said, and his voice did something I hadn't heard in a long time. It wavered. Please, can we just meet for coffee? Just talk? I stared at the wall across from me, at the generic frame print the apartment came with. A blurry city skyline at dusk. It looked like every ending I'd ever seen in a movie. Beautiful, distant, inevitable. I don't think that's a good idea, I said. Why not? He demanded, and I could hear the frustration edging in. I'm trying here. Because you're not trying, I thought. You're panicking. But what I said was calmer. Because you wanted space, I told him. I'm giving it to you. That's not what I meant. Then you should have said what you meant, I replied. I don't want to do this without you, he said, voice sharper now, desperate. And my chest tightened, not because I believed him, because a part of me remembered the man I used to love, the man who once held my hand under a table and whispered, We're a team. But teams don't keep score in secret, and love doesn't arrive only after consequences. You already are, I said. And then, before my heart could change my mind, I hung up. October came with cooler weather and more calls. Ethan tried twice a week at first, then almost daily by mid-month. I stopped answering altogether. He started texting instead. Long paragraphs. Confessions that felt polished. Apologies that sounded like they'd been rehearsed in front of a mirror. I miss you. The house feels empty. I've been talking to my sister and I realize I took you for granted. I see things differently now. And I'd be lying if I said part of me didn't feel something dark and quiet. Vindication. The part of me that had spent 25 years being told I wasn't enough was standing in the corner, arms crossed, whispering, Good, let him feel it. But mostly I just felt tired. Because the truth was, Ethan didn't miss me. Not yet. Not really. He missed the version of life where he could accuse me of absence while I kept everything running in the background. And now the background was gone. And the silence he'd asked for was finally loud enough to scare him. By October, Ethan's calls had stopped feeling random. They were scheduled, predictable, like a habit he couldn't break. Twice a week at first, then every other day. Then, by mid-month, almost daily. I stopped answering entirely. The phone would light up on my counter while I made dinner or folded laundry, and I would let it buzz itself into silence like a warning alarm I'd learned to ignore. So he changed tactics. The pleading stopped. The apologies softened. And suddenly my phone began filling with memories. Photos from vacations I barely remembered, because I'd been the one holding itineraries and sunscreen and snacks. Screenshots of emails I'd written him in the early years. Warm, hopeful, full of promises I hadn't yet learned could be weaponized. A grainy video clip from Michael's 8th birthday party, where I was pushing him on a tire swing, laughing so hard I'd nearly dropped my purse. One message came with the photo. You were always there. I see that now. I stared at it for a long time, because it felt less like remorse and more like evidence. Like Ethan was building a case. Like he was trying to rewrite the past with curated highlights, smoothing over the years in between where gratitude had been replaced by quiet contempt. Too late, I thought. But I didn't respond. Then the kids became part of the story. It was October 19th, around 8 p.m., when Michael called. His tone was different this time. Tight, careful, like he was bracing for impact. Mom, he said, skipping the usual small talk. What's going on with you and Dad? I exhaled slowly. What did he tell you? Michael hesitated. He says you abandoned him, he admitted. That you just left without trying to work things out. There it was, the narrative. The one that painted him as confused and wounded, and me as cold and impulsive. I closed my eyes, not because I was angry, but because I was tired. Michael, I said carefully, your father told me he didn't love me and wanted to separate. I gave him what he asked for. He said he didn't mean it that way, Michael replied. He says he just needed space. Then he should have said that, I said quietly. There was silence on the line. Then Michael sighed. Mom, he's really struggling. He keeps asking about you. He wants you to come home. I felt something sharp twist in my chest. Not guilt, not doubt, recognition. He wanted relief, not repair. I love you, I told Michael, but this is between me and your father. So that's it? He asked. You're not coming home? No. The word felt heavier than I expected, but also solid. Why not? Michael pressed, frustration edging in. If he's willing to try. Because I'm not willing anymore, I said. That stopped him. Then he said something that hurt more than I expected. So, 25 years and you're just done? I swallowed. 25 years of being told I was the problem? I replied gently. Yes, I'm done with that. He went quiet. I didn't know it was like that, he admitted. It wasn't your job to know, I said, and I never wanted you to. We talked for another 20 minutes. I explained more than I wanted to, about the resentment, the criticism, the way love had slowly turned into a performance review I could never pass. By the end, Michael said he understood. I don't know if he truly did, but he stopped pushing. Emma called 2 days later. Her approach was different, softer, more emotional. Mom, she asked quietly, are you okay? I'm okay, I said, and this time it was closer to the truth. She hesitated, then said, Dad says he made a mistake. He says he wants to fix things. I know what he says, I replied. Then came the question I'd been dreading. Do you still love him? The words settled in my chest like a stone. Did I? I thought of the man I married. The man who once brought me coffee in bed and said he couldn't believe how lucky he was, the man who held my hand in delivery rooms and cried when our children were born. And then I thought of the man who'd looked me in the eye and calmly told me I'd never been emotionally present. Love doesn't erase that. Love doesn't undo years of feeling inadequate while carrying everything alone. I don't know, I said honestly. I really don't know. Emma started crying softly on the other end of the line. I hate this, she whispered. I know, I said, my own voice cracking despite myself. I hate it too. By the end of October, Ethan had completely shifted strategies. No more apologies. No more requests to meet. Instead, my phone became a museum of our past. Photos. Memories. Remember when? Messages that landed like landmines. One text read, I found the old Christmas ornaments you bought our first year married. The ones with our names on them. Another, do you remember the night we danced in the kitchen after the kids went to bed? I remembered. Of course I did. But what he didn't seem to understand was this. Memory without accountability isn't romance. It's manipulation. The foreshadowing became impossible to ignore. Ethan wasn't trying to rebuild a future. He was trying to guilt me back into the past. And then came Thanksgiving. The kids called together this time, Michael on speaker, Emma's voice soft in the background. They wanted us all to have dinner together. Just one night, Emma said, like a family. I closed my eyes. No, I said gently. They didn't argue, but I heard the disappointment in the silence that followed. I'll be okay, I added quickly. You should be with your dad. After we hung up, I sat alone in my apartment for a long time, staring at the calendar. Thanksgiving was coming, and I knew deep down that it wasn't just a holiday. It was going to be a test, one that would force Ethan to confront what life looked like without me smoothing the edges, and force me to decide whether I could sit at a table pretending nothing had broken, just to make everyone else comfortable. I already knew the answer, but knowing didn't make it easier, because when you stop absorbing the pain to keep the peace, people notice, and they don't always thank you for it. Thanksgiving morning arrived without ceremony. No alarms, no schedule taped to the fridge, no silent tension thickening the kitchen air. I woke up in my apartment to a pale stripe of sunlight across the wall and the distant sound of traffic. For a moment, I forgot what day it was, and then I remembered everything at once. I didn't cook. I walked to the grocery store down the block and bought a rotisserie chicken, boxed mashed potatoes, and a slice of pumpkin pie from the bakery case. I ate at my small dining table, alone. With a glass of wine, I didn't feel guilty for pouring before noon. It was quiet. Not lonely. Peaceful. Emma texted me a photo later that afternoon. Ethan's dining room table. Just the three of them. The chairs where I used to sit looked wrong without me, like a set piece missing its anchor. Missing you, she wrote. I didn't reply. Not because I didn't care. Because I knew if I did, I'd start apologizing for a boundary I had every right to keep. The week after Thanksgiving, Ethan showed up at my apartment. I was halfway through folding laundry when the knock came, sharp, determined, familiar. My stomach dropped before my brain caught up. I opened the door. There he was, holding a casserole dish wrapped in foil, like an offering. I made your favorite, he said quietly. Tuna noodle. I stared at him, trying to understand how he'd gotten my address. Probably the kids, I thought. Of course it was the kids. Ethan, I said evenly, you shouldn't be here. I just wanted to see you, he replied. We need to talk. No, I said, we don't. 5 minutes, he pleaded. Please. Against my better judgment, against the voice inside me screaming, don't, I stepped aside. He sat on my couch, the casserole still in his lap like a shield. He looked older. Not dramatically, not in a way makeup could fix. Just worn. I've been going to therapy, he said. By myself. I didn't react. The therapist says I have issues with control, he continued. With resentment. She says I projected my own unhappiness onto you. I nodded once. I'm glad you're figuring that out. I want you to come home, he said quickly, like he was afraid I'd interrupt. No. The word landed between us clean and final. He blinked. Just like that? Yes. Marianne, he said, voice cracking now. I know I hurt you. I know I said things I didn't mean, but I'm different now. I met his eyes. Ethan, you spent years telling me I wasn't good enough, that I didn't see you, that I didn't care. I believed you. His eyes filled with tears. I internalized it, I continued. I thought I was failing you. I thought something was wrong with me. I stood up. And then I realized something, I said. I wasn't failing you. You were failing us. You were so focused on what I wasn't giving you that you never saw what I was. He shook his head, tears slipping free now. I know, he whispered. I know that now. Great, I said gently. I'm happy for you. So, you'll come back? No. His face crumpled. Why not? He asked. If you know I've changed? Because I don't trust it, I said honestly. And I don't trust us. You say that now? I mean it, I cut in. Maybe you've grown. That's wonderful, truly. But I've grown too. And part of that growth is realizing I don't want to spend the rest of my life walking on eggshells, waiting for the next criticism. I took a step back toward the door. I won't do that anymore. He stood slowly, left the casserole on the coffee table, and walked out without another word. I threw the food away. Not out of anger, out of clarity. Christmas came and went. I spent it in Seattle with Michael and his fiancée. Emma flew up too. We laughed. We cooked. We talked about everything except what we were all thinking. Ethan wasn't invited. The kids felt guilty. I told them it was okay. They needed to navigate this in their own way, and so did I. I filed for divorce 2 weeks later. Ethan didn't contest it. My lawyer said it would be finalized by March. I'm not bitter. I'm not angry. I'm just done. 25 years is a long time to give someone, but it's not a life sentence. I have time left, and I'm going to spend it on me. Michael's wedding is in June. I'll be there. Ethan will be there. We'll be civil. Emma's planning to visit next month. We're okay. As for Ethan calling and asking to talk, I'm glad I let it go to voicemail. Some conversations don't need to happen. Some endings don't need closure. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away and let the silence say everything you couldn't.